Welcome to the second of the two parts of my video about the disappearance of Amanda Robinson 45 years ago. If you haven't already, I suggest you watch the first part before you watch this one. I'll put a link in the description below for you to go to the first part. I'll begin this second part with the situation of Amanda's disappearance from the perspective of Amanda's family. I'll begin that with the appearance of her mother Anne and brothers Mark and Tim at the inquest. The Newcastle Herald reported on the 27th of June 2001, Amanda Robinson's brothers searched streets and beaches for their kid sister the morning after she went missing. Toronto court heard yesterday of the terrible strain the 14-year-old sudden disappearance had on the Swansea family. Mother Anne told how it led to the breakup of her second marriage. Brothers Mark and Tim told how shattered they were when they learned their sister was gone. Police believe Amanda was abducted and murdered less than 500 metres from her home on April 20, 1979, after she had been to a school dance. Wearing a "Have You Seen Amanda" badge on the lapel of her coat, Mrs. Robinson told of the heartache when she learned Amanda had not come home. "I was in hospital," she recalled. "Amanda had begged me to go to the school dance, but I would not let her unless she had a lift there and home. On the Friday, the night of the dance, she rang the hospital and again asked my permission. She had arranged to go with her friend Leanne Zeltons and was being taken there by Leanne's father. Mrs. Robinson was released from hospital the next morning when Amanda had not come home. I was still not well and the doctor gave me a sedative," she said. "I was in such a shock and that I think I was sedated all that week." Her marriage to Eddie Carter fell to pieces after Amanda went missing. He has since died. "It was all the stress and strain," Mrs. Robinson said. "Before that we had all been happy, but it was the worry and the heartache of it all. You either come together or break up in a situation like that. Eddie had to live with the guilt of not picking her up that night. I never blamed Eddie because I know he would never have hurt Amanda. But he kept saying if only he hadn't gone back to sleep, he would have been there for her." Mrs. Robinson said Amanda rang from the bus stop opposite St Mary's High School on the night because the bus was running late. She was supposed to have gone home with Mr. Zeltons, but she wanted to stay at the dance till it finished. Then the bus was running late and she rang Eddie to tell him. As he was talking to Amanda, her friends called that the bus was coming and she said, "I gotta go," and hung up. Eddie was home with Tim and went back to sleep. Amanda was last seen getting off the 348 Swansea bus on the Pacific Highway to walk the few blocks to her home in George Street. Mark Robinson, carpenter of Wood Rising in Lake Macquarie, said he was fishing on the Saturday morning when he got a message to come home urgently. He was 2 years older than his sister. "That day is all a bit of a blur to me," Mr. Robinson said. "When I heard Amanda was missing, I was really upset. Dr. Robinson broke down as he told the court of his search. I went everywhere looking for her, to friends' houses, everywhere. Later, I went with my cousin in his car, and we drove around all the beaches and any bush tracks we could think of. They found no trace of her. Younger brother Timothy, now a bricklayer of Swansea, said, "When I heard, I raced from the house and got his bike, but I'd say it meant to say got my bike. I remember riding around all the streets looking for her and talking to her friends to see if they knew where she could be." Now, I've only found a few reports in the media in regards to Amanda's biological father. The first one here was in the Sunday Telegraph on the 8th of July 2018. It says, 40 years later, her father, Ron Robinson, 78, says he always believed a serial killer was at work. "That's what I thought all along, but I wouldn't know how to prove it," he said, from his Swansea home. The second reference in the media was in the Courier Mail on the 29th of June 2019. And this says, Amanda's father, Ronnie Robinson, who had separated from Anne before their daughter's disappearance, remembers sitting 10 foot away from Milat at the inquest. He was a bad-looking mongrel, a real bad bugger, Ronnie recalls. He said he had nothing to do with these girls. Oh, yeah, you might say that, but I don't believe you. There was also a couple of photos of Ron Robinson that appeared in the Newcastle Herald on the 21st of April in 2009. I'll now move on to witness reports from some of Amanda's friends and others who attended the school dance. I'll start with a report that was in the Newcastle Herald on the 15th of December 2001. Amanda Robinson's school friend, Karen Louise Simpson of Tingara Heights, wept as she told the court of her last memory of her friend after they went to a school dance at St Mary's Gateshead on April 20, 1979. "I can still see her smiling face," she said in tears. "We left the dance and Amanda caught the bus. She was looking out the window waving to me. She stuck her head out and yelled, 'Hooray, Simo!' I never saw her again," she said. You may ask, did the police ever speak to the bus driver? The only mention I have ever seen of this was in the Daily Telegraph on the 23rd of February 2022, where it says they have interviewed the bus driver who had dropped Amanda off at Swansea after she caught the service from a school dance at Gateshead late on April 20. He has been cleared of any involvement in the disappearances. The first question that popped into my head was, when did they interview him? Was it 1979, 1998, or not until 2022? It would be nice to have a bit more information, but that seems to be it for the moment. Anyway, back to this school dance. On the 13th of December 2001, the Newcastle Herald reported, former St Mary's student Julie Davey said she and a friend were scared by the driver of a strange car which followed them after they left the dance. Mrs. Davey said she remembered seeing Amanda Robinson at the dance. My girlfriend and I were to get a lift home after the dance, but that didn't happen. So we were walking the short distance to our homes in Gateshead when we noticed a car following us, she said. It was going slowly behind us. We got scared and we ran up the street into the yard of a house where we hid, Mrs. Davey said. She said the car, a blue sedan, drove further up Oxford Street, did a U-turn and returned to the house where it stopped. The driver didn't get out of the car but stopped and looked in the yard, then drove off. We ran home as fast as we could. Mrs. Davey said police came to St Mary's seeking information about Amanda Robinson's disappearance a couple of days later, and the two girls told them about the incident. On the 14th of December 2001, the Newcastle Herald reported on the appearance of two of Amanda's friends at the inquest. The report states, Jane Campbell fought back tears yesterday as she told an inquest of losing best friend Amanda Robinson 23 years ago. I was so traumatised by it, I even changed schools, Ms. Campbell said. Toronto Court heard the two 14-year-olds went to St Mary's High School, Gateshead, and were close friends. The emotions and memories also flooded back for Amanda's mother, Anne, as she sat in the courtroom listening intently to the evidence of her daughter's friend. There was a group of us and we were all good friends, Miss Campbell said. On the night Amanda disappeared, she was going to come and stay at my place at Cole Point after the school dance, but she wasn't able to because her mum was in hospital. She said the friends saw each other every day at school and shared their teenage experiences. One of the last things we spoke about was going to the beach on Sunday together, Ms. Campbell said. I was so upset when Amanda disappeared. I blocked a lot of things out. Ms. Campbell told the inquest she had spoken to police several times at school about Amanda's disappearance. They wanted to know anything we knew that could help, but they seemed to have this belief that Amanda was a runaway, she said. At times I was in tears at the way they were insinuating that she could have run away with a boyfriend or something, and I kept saying to them that they were wrong. Amanda would never do anything like that. Amanda was a normal, happy 14-year-old like the rest of us. I believe they thought one of us knew she had run away from home and were holding back information. They didn't seem to think something more sinister had happened to her. It was a big thing to have one of your friends suddenly go missing. At that stage, we were quite scared at being confronted by the whole thing. Ms. Campbell said she spoke to police at her school library in company with Sister Mary only days after Amanda went missing. She recalled police holding an informal group discussion with Amanda's friends. Then, one day I got called out of class and the police were there, Ms. Campbell said. They said they had an anonymous tip that Amanda and I had been seen in a pinball parlour at Gateshead before school on April 26. So that was 6 days after the school dance. So after she disappeared. It was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. We never even went there. That upset me. There was no way Amanda had left home, and we all knew someone had taken her. But the police didn't seem to believe us. Shauna Jones told the inquest she believed police considered her friend a runaway. We knew Amanda, and we knew she wouldn't run away, Mrs. Jones said. We probably hoped she had, rather than someone have taken her, but Amanda wasn't like that. Mrs. Jones said she and a friend were followed by a strange car on the way home from the dance. We hid in a yard until it drove off, and then we just ran for our lives to homes in Gateshead, she said. I expect Mrs. Jones was the friend of the Mrs. Davey that was mentioned in the previous report. So it seems the investigation in 1979 may have treated Amanda as a runaway, with the focus of putting pressure on her friends to reveal her whereabouts. This brings us on to the investigations. The Newcastle Herald on the 15th of December 2001 states, Mr. Sadie told Toronto Court that the inquest had police running sheets from the 1979 investigations, but the original statements from witnesses had unfortunately been misplaced or destroyed. This was reaffirmed in the Newcastle Herald on the 20th of December 2001. It says, retired Sydney Homicide Squad detective Jeffrey McDowell said he took 6 signed statements in the 2 weeks he was on the Amanda Robinson case, but the documentation could not be found. So it would seem that when Strike Force Fenwick investigations began in March 1998, they were working effectively from scratch 19 years after the suspected crimes had occurred. So they were really behind the 8 ball there. But a question does arise. Why were the homicide detectives suddenly recalled only 2 weeks after they got there with what seems to be no obvious strong leads as to what had happened to Amanda? I had previously thought there may have been professional jealousy at work between the Newcastle and Sydney detectives, but reading through a number of other media reports, I've come to what I think's a more probable conclusion, which I'll get to. Though I'm not eliminating the professional jealousy as a possible factor, because there was a statement made that there was a running joke that there are New South Wales police and then there are Newcastle police. But anyway, I'll start with the 15th of December 2001 Newcastle Herald article that says, Retired Chief Superintendent Ron Newham said there were 4 detectives at Belmont to investigate criminal matters covering the Lake Macquarie area, which had a population of more than 110,000. We were significantly under-resourced, he said. They were committed, hard-working detectives at the time, but struggled to cope under the workload. On the 20th of February 2002, the Newcastle Herald added to this with, John Scott was involved in initial inquiries in the Hickey and Robinson disappearances and was a senior constable at Belmont Police Station in 1979. He said the Belmont Police Station was always short of officers. Police investigating the disappearances had access to just one car. And on the 2nd of July 2002, the Newcastle Herald reported, Mr. McDowell, who is now a civilian analyst with New South Police, said he recalled their role was specifically the Robinson matter, even though Robin Hickey had disappeared just 13 days earlier. He said that apart from informal talks, he did not recall any detectives inquiring into possible links between the 2 disappearances. On the same day, the Daily Telegraph reported, Mr. McDowell said he and Detective Alan Herman went to Newcastle in 1979 to help in the inquiry into the disappearance of Amanda Robinson. He could not recall who was in charge of the investigation or why they were recalled to Sydney just a fortnight after arriving in Newcastle. Asked why he was recalled, Mr. McDowell replied, I really can't answer that. He refuted suggestions of professional jealousy between the Newcastle and Sydney detectives, saying he doubted if the Newcastle detectives had their noses out of joint. It may have been the case we were asked to go up and give them a hand, he said. So that sounds like all they were there for was to help out. So that brings me to my conclusion of why they were recalled. So even though they were homicide detectives, it seems they weren't sent up to investigate a homicide. They were just sent up to help the under-resourced Belmont Police to hopefully quickly locate the missing 14-year-old Runaway, which was what they seemed to be thinking. And then perhaps after 2 weeks with no result, Sydney may have thought they had wasted enough time looking for a runaway and should get back to Sydney to investigate what they considered more important matters. That 2 weeks was too long to put into looking into a runaway. Now, the reasoning would probably be, in part, that they had already done all the initial hard work of gathering leads, and then it would simply be up to the local Belmont Police to follow up those leads, and they would eventually locate the runaway, or perhaps the runaway would just end up turning up home of her own accord. But that never happened. This assumption I've made or theory I have might not be the case. It's just a theory, but I think it does seem a reasonable possibility. Now, the inquest focused on 6 persons of interest out of the original 60 that Strikeforce Fenwick identified, who I previously said, even with those 6, that they were not likely to be involved but could not be eliminated. Not all of these were considered persons of interest in relation to Amanda, so I'll only mention a few of them here. Now, the major media focus had been on Ivan Milat, and I could make a whole video about all of that. It was a bit of a media circus, I think, and I probably will make a video about it at some point. The interest in Ivan Milat arose as it was known that he worked in the area and stayed at accommodation in suburbs near or even the same suburb as where the disappearances occurred. However, because this wasn't seriously looked at until Strikeforce Fenwick, and plus he wasn't known as a murderer before then, when Strikeforce Fenwick looked into that, or I think even Strikeforce Air, which was looking into Ivan Milat, may have even had something to do with that, there was not enough documentation left to show that he had been in the area on the days of the actual disappearances. There was some implications, but nothing documented. Though the Gold Coast Bulletin on the 13th of June 2001 does mention a factor that was actually in Ivan Milat's favour, that he wasn't involved. And that was, while Milat is known to have made some attempt to conceal the bodies of his victims, it could hardly be stated that it was unlikely they would have been found, as is the case in this situation. So the murders that he is known to have committed, he didn't really make much attempt to hide the bodies and they were easily found. And this is saying that this is definitely not the case, and because they have never been found. They weren't found at that time after 20 odd years, and they still haven't been found after 45. But it could be just that, for example, if Ivan Milat was involved and responsible, it may be that he just didn't take as much care as time went on in hiding the bodies, as he became a bit more confident. But that's just a supposition. Anyway, the coroner concluded in the Newcastle Herald on the 6th of July 2002 that one cannot discount the involvement of Ivan Milat in any of the disappearances, particularly that of Leanne Goodall. But anyway, in regards to Ivan Milat, recent media reports over the last 5 years state that Milat is no longer a suspect, but these reports don't actually give any reasoning for that. So is it just because they've found someone that they're more confident is a person of interest, or have they actually found more evidence that would make them believe that he's not? I have my suspicions they haven't found any such evidence, but So I will still leave my mind open to that possibility that Ivan Milat was involved. Next, the coroner discussed a Paul Podmore and says, given the varying accounts about his movements and the fact that he knew Amanda Robinson, he remained a person of interest in relation to her disappearance. Now, I'm not certain, but I think this Paul Podmore may be the person I previously discussed who was witnessed at Swansea when Amanda disappeared. And he gave those several different versions of where he was at the time or what he was doing there. And so in that same earlier report, he said he knew Amanda because he'd seen her riding a horse in a field nearby. But at another time when he was interviewed, he said he didn't know anything about her. So he may be right that he was a bit confused because of his bad memory, but that could be understandable because it was over 20 years later when they were looking seriously at this problem. Then he goes on to talk about a Kelvin Macey, and the coroner says, notwithstanding the fact that superficially Mr. Macey may be able to account for his whereabouts on the nights of April 7 and 20, 1979, I am not satisfied that the strength of information excludes Mr. Macey as a person of interest with respect to any of the girls. So it seems because of lack of evidence, they're having trouble including or specifically pointing the finger at one of these persons of interest as being strongly the likely person, as well as not having any strong evidence to say they're not involved. So it makes it very difficult, and I'd say it's a problem with the time that had passed. And then we come back to Neville Drinkwater. The coroner says he came to the attention of police 23 years ago in a sting operation when he drove his car twice past a female police officer. Her evidence said 3 times, but anyway, who was at a Swansea bus stop not far from where Amanda Robinson had gone missing. The combined thrust of his versions of events of the night Amanda disappeared leave him greatly lacking credibility and a reliable alibi, Mr. Abernethy said. While the factors alone could never prove a case against him beyond reasonable doubt, he must be considered a person of interest in both the Amanda Robinson and Robin Hickey investigations. Yeah, so it's a big problem that they just didn't have enough evidence to point the finger specifically at anyone, either way, to say, yes, you're cleared, or no, we need to look at you very closely. Yeah, and unfortunately, human memories are not totally infallible and can either change over time. So the witnesses and the persons of interest can get confused and have discrepancies. There might be slight differences to each witness's statement. While I'm speaking about Neville Drinkwater, I did mention in the part 1 video how he heard screams and screech of tyres 20 years after Amanda disappeared, and sort of a question, why didn't he mention it at the time? Well, the Newcastle Herald reported on the 23rd of February 2002 that he appeared as a witness in the inquest and he did have an explanation. So I'll just go through that now. An alleged suspect in the disappearance of Amanda Robinson told the state coroner he heard a terrifying scream and a screech of tyres from where the teenager was last seen in Swansea 22 years ago. Now, in this article, it actually doesn't mention his name, but all the facts fit, so I'm pretty confident that it's him. So I'll continue. The 43-year-old told the court he forgot about the important piece of information until he was arrested in a police operation a month after Amanda Robinson went missing. So that fact fits. The man said he tried to tell the police after his arrest in May 1979, but they refused to listen. He admitted police had found pornographic material, women's underwear, and tape when they searched his car and home during the investigation. So that fits with Neville Drinkwater as well. Counsel assisting the coroner, Patrick Sadie, told the court the man was questioned by police about his movements on the night of April 20, 1979, the night Amanda Robinson disappeared. Did you contact the police and tell them about this scream you heard? Mr. Sadie asked. No, I forgot about it until the police pulled me in for something in May that year and spoke to me, he said. How could you possibly have forgotten something as important as that, a spine-chilling scream when a girl went missing? Mr. Sadie asked. Do you expect this court to believe you? I'd forgotten about it, the man told the court. The man told Mr. Sadie that he did not know Robin Hickey. You knew her from the Caves Beach Hotel before she went missing on April 7, 1979, Mr. Sadie said. No, I didn't know her except for knowledge of her from what I read in the newspapers, the man told the court. You told police you tried to flirt with her at the hotel, but she ignored you. Isn't that right? Mr. Sadie asked. Yeah, I believe that was true, the man said. The man alleged he was bashed by police when he was questioned in 1979, but never told anyone because he had been scared. The coroner told the man that these were serious allegations. Yeah, so we have an explanation there that he's given. So could be true, because he has said the police didn't want to listen, because it seems that they were trying to put him in the frame. So that could be a reason why he didn't report it at the time, but anyway, a new person of interest did come to light in 2019, which is 40 years after their disappearances. His name is Warren John McCorriston. I have covered his possible involvement thoroughly in previous videos over the last 4.5 years, it would be nearly. But a question does arise as to whether the Mateer twins and/or George Cecil, who were the scout leaders and bus drivers, had at least some knowledge of what happened to Amanda, even if they were not involved, because they were at the bowling club and they had a connection with Warren McCorriston, who's believed to have also been at the club because he was a scout and they were the scout leaders. And later on, he provided strong support to George Cecil when he was accused of a sexual assault against the person who was Warren McCorriston's friend back in the 1970s. And he basically said what a wonderful guy this George Cecil was. So you sort of wonder, did George Cecil have some knowledge of what Warren McCorriston may have been up to? Maybe he did. Maybe it was nothing to do with Amanda Robinson, but yes. So I'm not saying... So the allegations against Warren McCorriston being involved are just allegations at present. He's just considered a strong person of interest. Yeah, moving on. In making my videos over these last years, I have been contacted by a couple of people who have come up with some alternative possibilities in regards to Amanda Robinson. The first one I'll mention, which I will say from the start I have a lot of difficulty believing and suspect he could be a troll or he's seriously misunderstanding, probably the best way to put it. Anyway, it would easily be disproven anyway. So I'll just briefly mention it. He comes from a small town in California, and his claim is that Amanda Robinson was living there and that she was taken there by people she thought were her relatives, which seems a bit odd. He claims it is definitely her, as he has seen her driver's licence, and local police have confirmed that it is her. I don't think I'll comment any further on that one. The other one is a lot more believable actually, but though I think the person he is describing is probably not Amanda, but another girl who attended the school dance that night. From memory, he said that he was with a group of friends driving through Newcastle in the early hours of the morning on the night that the school dance occurred. And he says that they picked up a girl in the Gateshead Bennett's Green area that said she had been to the school dance. And I think he said that she left her shoes behind on the road and that her boyfriend was supposed to pick her up from the school dance. Now, they dropped her off at her boyfriend's cabin or van that was in a caravan park in Belmont. He said her boyfriend was much older and she was arguing with him about not picking her up when they left. And that was how that went. I have recently been contacted by someone else with another theory which I'll put to you as well. Their theory is that there was a couple in 1977 who were convicted of manslaughter of their 10-week-old baby through neglect. Now, her theory is that in 1979 they heard of Robin's disappearance, which to me probably seems unlikely, as Robin's disappearance wasn't reported in the media till after she disappeared. But anyway, the theory is that this couple kidnapped Amanda and took her to Western Australia because it seems that's where at least the father was originally from, and that they got her to have a baby and then murdered her. So there are 3 theories for you to consider. I'm not saying any of them are right, or that one of them could be right. I mention these things because I think it is important to remain open to all and any possibilities until we actually come up with an answer. And even if they're unfounded and extremely unlikely, they may provide a link or a clue to something that comes up in future. Because who knows what bizarre thing may come up that no one's ever thought of. So I'll leave it there and just finish up with a few newspaper clips and extracts of a couple of NBN television news reports that will indicate some of the pain and suffering that this has caused and continues to cause to the Robinson family.
Doesn't go away, never. It's there all the time. Just heartbreak and suffering.
Do you think she's alive now?
No. She was the most gorgeous little girl. Everybody loved her. We just need answers. Because you can't live like this. It's just hell on earth. Heartache and suffering for 40 years.
I'd hate to think we'd go to our graves without knowing something.
So I think what Mark said there at the end pretty much says it all. So if you have any information that may help, please report it.
Ring us anonymously if you think you have that missing piece of this puzzle. And it's never too late to bring that information to our attention.
So I hope you found this video interesting and informative. If you'd like to watch more of my videos, please subscribe and click on the bell to be notified when I upload future videos. I'm David A. Elliott. Have a good one and see you around like a ristle.